The science of voodoo, when the mind attacks the body. This is metaphysics. Late one night in a small Alabama cemetery, Vance Vanders had an altercation with a local witch doctor who threw a bottle of foul smelling liquid in his face and told him that he was going to pass away and that no one could save him. Returning home, Vanders took to his bed and began to feel increasingly worse. After a few weeks, emaciated and dying, he checked into the local hospital where doctors were unable to find a cause for his symptoms or arrest his deteriorating health. Only then did his wife tell one of the doctors, Drayton Doherty, about the spell or the curse or whatever you want to call it. Black magic. Of course, you can protect yourself by the Christian Orthodox mysteries. The confession has an exorcism at the end, by the way. And of course, the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ through the Holy Eucharist. Now, Doherty thought very deeply about the matter for a long time. The next morning, he invited the Vanders family to come to the dying Vance's bedside and told them that the previous night he managed to trick the witch doctor into bringing him to the cemetery, and after tying him to a tree, he did not let him go until he explained how the curse worked. And the medicine he had injected into Vance, he told them, put a lizard's eggs inside his stomach, which hatched inside his body. What was left was a reptile that was eating Vanders from the inside out. Oh my God. I shouldn't laugh. Grand ceremony. Doherty then called a nurse who had filled the syringe with a strong emetic, in other words, something that would make you throw up, and they had agreed beforehand. He ceremoniously examined the organ and injected its contents into Vanders' arm. A few minutes later, Vanders began to moan and vomit uncontrollably, and in the middle of the whole process, unnoticed by anyone else in the room, Doherty added the incriminating element, a green lizard he had hidden in his bag. "Look what came out of you," Vance shouted. "You are freed from the curse." Vanders glanced over and then leaned back against the pillow and fell into a deep sleep. When he awoke the next morning, he was alert and had a great appetite. He quickly recovered and was released from the hospital after a week. Evidence from this particular incident that happened 80 years ago was confirmed by 4 people working in the health sector. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about the case is Vanders' survival. There are numerous documented cases from various parts of the earth involving people who passed away after suffering some kind of a curse. Without medical records and autopsy results, there is no way to be sure exactly how these people, of course, passed away. A common element in these cases, however, is that an awe-inspiring figure places a curse on someone, either with a foul bone or by dangling an animal bone in front of the victim, and soon after the victim passes away, apparently of natural causes. The new voodoo, you might think that things like this are increasingly rare and confined to remote tribes, but according to Clifton Meader, a doctor at Vanderbilt School of Medicine in Nashville, Tennessee, who has collected evidence on cases like Vanders' case, the curse has taken on a new form. Consider the case of Sam Schoeman, who was diagnosed in the 1970s with terminal liver cancer and only a few months to live. Schoeman died within that time as predicted, but the autopsy revealed that his doctors had been wrong. The tumor was tiny and had not metastasized. He didn't die of cancer, but of thinking he was going to die of cancer. It's like the self-fulfilling prophecy, the fear eats away at you. But just basically the fear that somebody has put a curse on you, Now, he did not die of cancer, but thinking he was going to die of cancer, Meteor said. If everyone treats you like you're going to pass away, you'll believe it. Everything in your entire being will be prepared for you to do that. And so this particular man did not die of cancer, but of his belief that he was dying of cancer. Cases like Schoeman's may be extreme examples of much more widespread phenomena. Many patients who suffer from painful side effects, for example, many suffer from them only because they have been told to expect them. Furthermore, people who believe they are at high risk for a particular disease are more likely to develop that disease in people with the same risk factors who believe they are not at high risk. It seems that modern witch doctors wear white coats today and carry stethoscopes. The nocebo effect. The idea that believing you are sick can make you sick, it's like the placebo or nocebo. The placebo is like they give you a drug, but it's nothing, and you think you're taking an actual drug that's going to heal you and you get better. And this is the opposite. This is the nocebo effect. N-O-C-E-O-B. The idea that believing you are sick can make you sick and may seem far-fetched, but rigorous clinical trials have proven beyond any doubt that the opposite is true, namely that the power of submission can improve health, and this is well known, a placebo effect. Of course, placebo does not work miracles, but they can cause measurable physical effects. The placebo effect has an evil twin, the nocebo effect, in which fake pills and negative expectations can cause harmful effects. The term nocebo, meaning I will suffer harm, was not proposed until the 1960s, and the phenomenon has been much less studied than placebo. It's not easy indeed to get ethical approval for studies designed to make people feel worse. What we do know suggests that the effects of nocebo are far-fetched. Death by voodoo, if it exists, may represent an extreme form of the nocebo effect, says anthropologist Robert Hahn of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia, who has studied the nocebo effect. Threat to life. In clinical trials, about a quarter of patients in control groups given inactive treatment experienced negative side effects. The severity of these side effects sometimes matches that associated with real drugs. A research review of 15 trials involving thousands of patients who were prescribed either beta blockers or a controlled substance showed that both groups reported comparable levels of side effects, including fatigue, withdrawal symptoms, sexual dysfunction, and an equal number had to drop out of these studies because of these side effects. Sometimes the effects can be life-threatening. Beliefs and expectations are not only conscious, logical phenomena, they also have physical consequences, Hahn states. Nocebo-like phenomena can also be found in normal daily medical practice. About 60% of patients receiving chemotherapy begin to feel unwell before starting it. It can happen days before or on the journey as they go to treatment, says clinical psychologist Guy Montgomery of Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York. Sometimes the very thought of the treatment or the doctor's voice is enough to make patients feel sick. This nausea of anticipation probably comes from classic addiction, when patients subconsciously associate some part of their experience with feeling sick. Also, it may be because of their narrow expectations. Adhesive. Worryingly, the nocebo effect can even be contagious. Cases where symptoms without an identifiable cause have spread to groups of people have occurred for centuries, a phenomenon known as mass psychogenic disease. Such an outburst inspired a recent study conducted by psychologists Irving Kirsch and Giuliana Mazzoni of the University of Hull in Great Britain. They asked some of the group of students to inhale a sample of normal air, which they had been told was suspected to have an environmental toxin linked to nausea, headache, itching, and drowsiness. Half of the participants also saw a woman who inhaled the sample and developed these symptoms. Students who inhaled the substance were more likely to report such symptoms than students who did not. Symptoms were also more severe in women, particularly those who had seen someone else become ill, a type of bias also found in mass psychosis. Research shows that if someone hears or notices the potential side effects that are more likely to develop it themselves, and this puts doctors into a strange situation. On the one hand, people should have the right to be informed about what to expect, but this very information makes it more likely that they will experience these side effects said Mazzoni. Nocebo in a wider environment? That means doctors need to choose their words carefully to minimize negative expectations, Montgomery says. It all depends on how you say it. And hypothesis can help too. Hypothesis changes expectations, which reduces anxiety and stress and improves outcome. Montgomery adds, I believe that hypothesis could be applied to a wide range of symptoms where expectations play a role. Is the scale of the nocebo problem severe enough to warrant such countermeasures? We don't know exactly because there are so many questions that remain unanswered. Under what circumstances do nocebo effects occur, and how long do they last? It seems that, as with placebo reaction, the nocebo effects vary widely and may be highly context dependent. Placebo effects in clinical settings are often stronger than those included in a laboratory, says Paul Enoch, psychologist at the University Hospital Tübingen in Germany, who suggests that the nocebo problem may have strong effects in the real world. For obvious reasons, however, laboratory experiments are designed to include only mild and temporary nocebo symptoms. Real effects, it also is not clear who is vulnerable. Optimism or pessimism in one's outlook may play a role, but there are no consistent predictions by personality. Both sexes can fall victim to mass psychosis, although women report more symptoms than men. Enck showed that in men it is more the expectation than the classic dependence that causes nocebo systems. For women, the opposite is true. Women tend to operate more on past experiences, while men seem more reluctant to consider what has gone before, she says. Now, what is becoming clearer is that these apparently psychological phenomena have very real consequences in the brain. Using PET, positron emission tomography, brain imaging to scan the brains of subjects given a placebo or nocebo, John Carr Zubieta of the University of Michigan recently showed that the effects of nocebo were associated with the reduction in dopamine and opiate activity. This would explain how nocebo can increase pain. Placebos, unsurprisingly, cause the opposite reaction. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Benedetti of University of Turin School of Medicine in Italy found that nocebo-induced pain can be suppressed by a substance called proglumide, which blocks receptors for the hormone cholecystokinin, CCK for short. Normally, expectations of pain cause anxiety, which activates CCK receptors and promotes pain. Absolute cause, however, the ultimate cause of the nocebo effect is not neurochemistry but beliefs. In other words, it's the mind. According to Hahn, surgeons are often wary of operating on people they think are going to die because those people often do. And the belief that one is prone to heart attack is itself a risk factor. A study found that women who believe they are particularly vulnerable to heart attack are about 4 times more likely to die from coronary heart disease than other women with the same risk factors for the disease. Despite growing evidence that the nocebo effect is very real, it's very difficult in this age of reason to accept that people's beliefs can kill them. After all, most of us would laugh if a strangely dressed man jumped in front of us brandishing a bone and told us that we were going to die. But think how you would feel if you heard the same thing from a smartly dressed, serious doctor with a wall full of hanging degrees and certificates of medical knowledge, stocked with a large collection of tests and analysis. Social and cultural background is critical, according to Enck. Meador believes that Schoenmann's, the man who died because he thought he was going to die of liver cancer, misdiagnosis and subsequent death are characterized by many of the important elements found in voodoo deaths. A powerful doctor announces a death sentence which is accepted unquestionably by the victim and his family, who then begin to act in accordance with his belief. Schoemann, his family, and his doctors all believed he was dying of cancer, and so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Nothing mysterious. Bad news promotes bad physiology. I believe you can convince people that they are going to die, pass away, make it actually happen, as it says Meador. I don't think there's anything mysterious about it. We're not comfortable with the idea that words or symbolic actions can cause death because this conflicts with the biochemical model of our world. Perhaps when the biomedical basis of death voodoo is revealed in its detail, it will be easier to accept that it is real and that it can affect each of us. Overdose? It's a slump after breaking up with his girlfriend. In the slump, Derek Adams took all his pills at once, and then he thought again. And fearing he was going to pass away, he asked his neighbor to take him to the hospital, where he collapsed. He was shaky, pale, sleepy, his blood pressure dropped, and his breathing was rapid. However, tests and toxicological analysis came back clean. Over the next 4 hours, Adams received 6 liters of saline, but showed no significant improvement. Then doctors from the clinical trial of antidepressants in which Adams had taken part appeared, and Adams had taken part in the investigation a month ago. He had initially felt his mood lift, but an argument with his girlfriend caused him to swallow the remaining 29 pills. The doctor revealed that Adams was in the control group. In other words, they weren't sleeping pills or anything. The pills from which he had overdosed did not contain any medicinal substance. When Adams learned that, he was surprised and recovered in tears, and within 15 minutes he had fully regained consciousness. His blood pressure and heart rate returned to normal. So you can see, all this is in the mind. The power of the mind. It's sticky. In November 1998, a high school teacher in Tennessee noticed a gasoline-like odor and began complaining of headaches, nausea, shortness of breath, and dizziness. The school was evacuated, and over the next week, more than 100 people, staff and students, presented to the local emergency department complaining of similar symptoms. And after thorough checks, no medical explanation was found for the reported illness. A questionnaire given after a month revealed that the people who reported the symptoms were more female and had seen or heard of a classmate who had become ill, and it was the Nocebo effect on a grand scale, says psychologist Irving Kirsch of the University of Hull in Great Britain. There was not, as far as we could tell, an environmental toxin, but people started getting sick just thinking it could have been. Kirsch believes that seeing a classmate develop symptoms created expectations of illness in other children, triggering mass psychosis, and outbreaks occur all over the world. In Jordan, in 1998, 800 children had side effects after a vaccination, and 122 of them went to hospital, but no problem with the vaccine was found. So you can see, it's the power of the mind. That's why it's just so important to never fear. Always look on the bright side. You're a child of Christ. He loves you and he protects you. Put all your faith in him. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.